Welcome back to another episode of Weights and Wealth. Today we'll be talking a little bit about some things that are killing your fat loss and also hurting your savings. Ted, who is the shout out of this episode going to?
The shout out of this episode is to Cheryl from Rochester, New York, who has shared our podcast on Facebook.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you for the share.
This week's wealth wisdom of the week is to live within your means. And this goes also very well with our book club. Today's wealth book of the month is The Millionaire Next Door. And it just kind of gets into what makes a millionaire. And the biggest thing is to live below your means. And if you listen to any Dave Ramsey, you'll know that that most millionaires are self-made and they just have regular jobs. They, aren't making $300,000, $500,000 a year. It just takes consistent saving and investing. And I know we had one question on YouTube probably about a month ago that was, is $1 million enough to retire on? And the answer is pretty much yes. I mean, the safe withdrawal rate for a portfolio, which is the amount of money you can take out every year without the principal actually being depleted, is about 3 to 4%. So you could take out $30,000 to $40,000 a year from a $1 million investment portfolio without dipping below $1 million. And that coupled with Social Security, which I think is like $25,000 to $30,000 a year, you'll have $65,000 to $80,000 of income a year, which is enough to live on. So you can retire on just $1 million.
Millionaire Next Door is one of the first personal finance books, I guess you could say, that I read. But it's got a lot of stats in it. It's basically these two guys that conducted this research on all these different millionaires in America and looked for common threads. So if you like numbers, it's a really good book. And also the tables take up a lot of the pages, so it's shorter than it looks. It also, as Nick said, it goes into some of the statistics that 80-something% of millionaires are self-made, so it dispels a lot of myths as well. And as Nick said, talks about being frugal and how that is the ability to live below your means is really the path to financial success. Not necessarily a certain career or a certain investment strategy, I guess. I guess it's my turn for the book club. The weights book of the month is The Way to Live by George Hackenschmidt. Now, anyone who knows who George Hackenschmidt is might say, didn't he die like 100 years ago? And the answer is yes, but he wrote a book. Because books were around, believe it or not, about 100 years ago. So George Hackenschmidt was a bodybuilder, strongman, wrestler in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And he wrote a book called The Way to Live on what he thought was essentially the best way to train. And then he also, the second half of the book goes into all of his accomplishments, but I'll just read one quote from the book. He was very ahead of his time. There's a lot of principles in this book, such as even just the advice to train full body, to hit every muscle 2 to 3 times a week, frequency-wise. Like, he had these principles for his training routine that still apply very much today. So, and he said, if you do not find time to become and remain healthy, you will be obliged to find time to be ill. Surely some of the hours wasted on banal and often harmful pleasures might be devoted to physical exercise. So he has advice like that throughout the book as well that, again, are very applicable today. And I personally really like reading about what they did 100 years ago before they had supplements and steroids and how they trained, and think that it's very applicable to how we should train since we're natty, obviously. And I think that is better advice for the average person compared to any of the muscle magazines or Instagram influencers of today. So
Yeah, did that guy invent the hack squat?
yes, yeah, okay. And a bunch of other lifts as well. So great book. I highly recommend it. Very short read too.
Ted, do you have our article for this week?
I do. This place, I couldn't believe that it was real when I came across this article, but it's called Action Park. So it's on the history.com, like the History Channel. It's the rise and fall of Action Park, New Jersey's most dangerous water park. The rides at this park are absolutely ridiculous. There's one water slide that's a slide coming down, and then it does a full loop where like you're vertical, and there's all these crazy things about the rides. Like the guy that owned the water park was paying people like $100 to be test dummies for it, basically. Apparently when they first built it, this article says they sent a test dummy down it and it came out without the head on. Like stuff was extremely dangerous. There were ambulances multiple times every single day to this water park. At another point in the article, it says that in their gigantic wave pool, the lifeguards rescued on average over 24 people a day. It opened in 1978. People were just a different breed growing up back then, I guess.
When did it get closed? I mean, I'm assuming it's closed.
Yeah, it has to be. I'm trying to see if I can find it. They nicknamed the wave pool the Grave Pool. This place is ridiculous. If you see the pictures of some of these rides, we'll obviously, if you're watching, we'll have some of them here. But yeah, it was shut down by the advisory board on carnival amusement ride safety. I guess they reopened it. The founder of the park's son reopened it with less crazy rides, but that was closed in 1996. Was responsible for 6 fatalities by that point. Absolutely crazy. It reopened in 2014, Mountain Creek Water Park. So. Yeah, absolutely crazy. What do you think the most dangerous thing you did was as a kid?
I don't know. We were really into like riding stuff around, like bikes, stuff like that. And eventually my brother got like a mini dirt bike type thing. So we would attach like a rope to the end of that and have like these little like big wheels, carts, stuff like that behind it and drag each other around with it. That probably wasn't the safest thing.
A lot of scrapes and bruises from that.
Yeah, I know. We had a pretty big hill in front of our house, so we would ride stuff down there, like ripstick, stuff like that. Fell a few times. Mm-hmm. I mean, we played airsoft.
Yeah.
Did that. There was behind where I grew up was kind of out in like the middle of nowhere, and there were woods behind my house, and this house must have been from like the 1800s, very like broken down, like there were trees growing up through the middle of it, and we would go in there and play around in there. So I don't know, just a few of the things.
Yeah. My with the woods behind the house, my brothers and cousins and some of like their friends and we would go into the woods. And this was like in middle school, right after Hunger Games became popular. But we'd go into the woods with our knives, and we'd take a certain amount of time, like a half hour. We'd set like a time limit and sharpen a bunch of sticks and make like throwing knives and spears and stuff. And then there's this fallen tree that like fell between like a fork in a tree. So it was up at like an angle when it fell. So that was like the cornucopia, and we'd all start there. And then we'd like set a timer for like 2 minutes, and we'd all go run off. And when 2 minutes was up, it was like go time. And then you could like throw the throwing knives that you made, not like the actual knives, but like the sticks that you made and thrown out. You could throw those at people or hit them with like your sword or like branch. And if you did that, then they were like dead, and they had to go back to the everyone would go back to cornucopia at the beginning, or they'd follow people around to see who would win at the end. But got a little dangerous. somebody got hit in the head, so we stopped playing. But it was fun while it lasted.
Yeah. I know, doesn't Jordan Peterson say it's good to let your kids do dangerous things carefully or something like that?
Yeah, we've also mentioned the book The Coddling of the American Mind on here before, and they say similar stuff. Like, it's good to have some degree of like free range for your kids so that they can learn on their own, like what's dangerous and what their limits should be, and so that they can pursue just like normal kid imagination and play, and learn how to interact with like other kids and have that like get hurt and be tough and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, speaking of dangerous activities, we'll be talking about buy now, pay later today.
That was the greatest transition we had on the show.
So I know we touched on it in another episode, but it's just becoming super big to pay for something really small and have it essentially financed.
I feel like every time you go online to buy something, it's like, or due in payments of this, and it has like a payment plan. Like no matter whether it's pre-workout or like anything, it's crazy.
And they don't charge any interest, which is like, how are they making money? Well, it must be because people buy more when they don't have to pay a bunch of money up front for something, which is really like the dangerous part of it. I mean, if you're going just dollars and cents, then it would make sense to finance everything you buy if you're not being charged interest, just because of the time value of money. But psychologically, you can just buy more. And like a lot of these poor financial products, they're, really targeted towards lower income people, because they're people that are less likely to be able to afford something
without the payment.
So it pretty much lets you, buy something before you can really, I guess, afford it.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of the principle of not... Nick's butt still hurts. He's still sitting on the pillow. Have you ever heard of like the principle of not buying something unless you can pay for it twice?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's something that I try to use whenever I'm looking at purchasing something. If you wouldn't pay for double the value of it, don't buy it. But this whole buy now, pay later thing, paying for something in 5 payments, that's like, instead of if you wouldn't buy it for double, it's like the opposite of that. It's, would you buy it for a fifth of what the actual price is, So instead of making it mentally harder on yourself to buy something, it's making it mentally easy on yourself to buy something. So I feel like it definitely is like a trap for people where they feel like they can afford it even though they can't.
Yeah. And it really does end up making you spend more money. It's kind of like the credit cards that give you rewards for spending. They're not doing that out of the kindness of their hearts. They aren't financing things for you just to be nice.
Why would you say that, Nick?
It's really just so that they can end up profiting more from you. One thing, Ted, do you know how much credit cards charge the vendors on average? I think it's like 3%.
I was gonna say like 3 or 4%. Well, I think it might actually be like 3 for most, but then American Express is like 4 maybe. I know American Express is a little more, which is why some places don't allow you to pay with American Express. Although that's becoming less common, because American Express is now like the most popular credit card, because it does have better rewards in a lot of cases.
Yeah, it does. And when I was first getting a credit card, my dad was telling me not to get an American Express because it's not accepted a lot of places.
That's what my dad said too.
I don't really think that's necessarily that true anymore.
Yeah, most places. Piggly Wiggly, I know, doesn't accept American Express, because I've run into that issue before.
But it like they do charge 3 or 4%, which is just mind blowing to me that every single credit card charge they get 3 to 4% of that.
I mean, that's like with any payment processor too. If you have a business account on Venmo, like I know this from before I had my Ted's Lift Help website, I would just accept payment on Venmo, but they charge like 10 cents plus 3.5%. Like every Stripe Square, like they all charge a fee. That's how they make money, you know?
Yeah, which is why like a lot of gas stations will have minimums because they do, like a lot of them do have that fixed, 10, 15 cent fee every time that you swipe a card.
On my USA debit card, I'm not sure if there's a minimum, but I don't know that there is, but I get 10 cents on every purchase.
Oh.
So whenever I have like a really small purchase, I always use my debit card instead of my credit card, because usually I pay for everything on my credit card to build the rewards. But if it's like a small purchase, I just use my debit card to get 10 cents back.
But yeah, these are all fees that are eventually baked into the price. Like if we were just using cash, hypothetically, prices would all be 3 to 4% lower. But now the people that get screwed are the ones that use cash because they don't get the 1 to 2% cash back that you do for using a credit card.
You're telling me inflation is not 6% right now? It's 10% because of credit card inflation?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. No. But back to buy now, pay later. I guess I really didn't have anything more about that.
Do you know what percentage of products are bought with buy now, pay later services or anything like that?
I really don't.
Okay. Maybe we'll add that in.
It's just, I'm sure it's being used because you get the option to use it for just about anything now.
Yeah.
I know we mentioned Domino's is doing it.
Yeah.
So, which I don't understand the point of that, but because it's $15. So
some people can't afford a $15 pizza. But yeah. All right. I guess we'll switch over to the weights side. Although it's not really a weights topic today. We're going to be talking about cardio. So cardio is Nick mentioned the tool for wealth that's killing your savings, buy now, pay later. And the tool for weights that is killing your fat loss is cardio. So we've said before that the goal of your workout should be to increase your metabolism, not to burn more calories. People get really hung up here on what the studies say as far as how much each pound of muscle will burn in terms of calories. So for a long time, people would say, oh, each pound of muscle burns an extra 100 something calories every day. And then people started doing studies on it to see what the actual number was. Because we do know that building muscle helps you burn more calories. And then the studies started to show, they all show different numbers, but some will show it's only 15 extra calories a day. Some will show it's more like 35. Some will show it's 60. So then people started saying, oh, well, having extra muscle is almost like negligible in the amount of calories that it burns per day if you're only talking about adding a couple pounds.
How much muscle does the average person have? Because I really have no idea what my body composition would be.
That's a good question. I know like lean body mass, like you probably have like 160 something pounds of lean body mass, or like 170 pounds, but then that's not all muscle. So I'd have to refresh on that. Whenever you get a DEXA scan, it like tells you, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But the thing that we have to look at here is that it's not actually just about how many pounds of muscle you have. So when we look at muscle increasing metabolism, it's also about the signal that building muscle or maintaining muscle sends to your body, right? So when you're building muscle or maintaining muscle in a calorie deficit, when you're lifting weights, it's telling your body to use energy for that muscle mass, right? Whereas when you do cardio, it's telling your body to become more efficient with calories. Because if you're doing cardio and you want to get better at doing cardio, and your body's going to try to get better at whatever you're doing, right? So if you're doing cardio, it's telling your body, let's get better at being efficient with calories so we can last on this energy for longer, right? Whereas muscle is a very expensive tissue. If we're lifting weights and trying to increase our strength or putting a lot of tension on that muscle and trying to build more muscle, it's telling our body that it has to use energy for that expensive resource, that muscle. So it's not as much about just the amount of muscle you have on your body as much as I think it's about the signal that you're sending to your body. And a lot of the studies won't capitalize on that principle of the signal. They'll just look at this is how much muscle this person has and their total daily energy expenditure, and this person and their total daily energy expenditure. So it's just like a correlation of all these different people, and it doesn't really take into account, like, is this person actively lifting and trying to gain muscle or trying to hold on to muscle? It just correlates muscle and daily calorie burn.
Okay.
So a good example, I guess, to go with this is someone recently came to me and they got a program from somebody else. This person's about our size, like 6 foot, 210 pounds, relatively lean, but he's trying to cut and get his abs to come out a little bit and get rid of that extra fat. He's probably around like 15, 16% body fat, trying to get down to like 12%. And he told me the program that he's on, and he's like, it's killing me. I'm doing like an hour and a half of cardio every day. Like I'm just so done with the cardio. I don't know how long I can keep doing this. And like I've plateaued. He's asking me what I would recommend doing. And I said, I don't know who gave you that program, but they clearly don't know what they're doing trying to get you to cut. Like that's a very beginner thing to do, to just throw a bunch of cardio at someone to get them to lose weight as a trainer. But you see it a lot with online coaches. I have a lot of beef with online coaches because a lot of them didn't work in a gym. They haven't worked with a lot of people in person. So they don't really know how to get people results, in my opinion. That's why I always recommend, if you're going to work with an online trainer, you make sure that they've worked in a gym in an in-person setting first. And for anyone looking to become a trainer, get your start in a gym, working one-on-one with people. But back to this person, the guy trying to cut, doing 60 to 90 minutes of cardio every single day. I told him cardio is almost like a last resort tool, right? If you've been doing a cut and at the very end of this cut, we want to use cardio at the end to burn more calories, we can do that. But if you're doing a long cut, we don't want to just keep adding more and more cardio throughout the entire cut, because where does that leave you, right? Like, have you ever tried to do a lot of cardio before?
I don't do much cardio.
But I know you did get into running at one point for a little bit.
I mean, I ran cross country in middle school, and I think 1 year in high school.
But in college, there was a point in time where you started running.
Maybe a little bit. I wouldn't have been consistent with it, though, I don't think.
Well, I remember it. I remember you started running like 3 miles multiple times a week. And I'm not sure if you remember how much time that took from your schedule compared to lifting at the gym. But the problem is, like, to keep doing more and more cardio, it's like burning time in your schedule, right? Whereas the gym, you can make progress 2 or 3 times a week, 40 minutes, right? But to keep making progress on that cardio, you have to keep adding more and more and more. And it's going to burn a hole in your schedule that you just might not have time for, or that you don't want to do, like this guy that came to me. So basically the takeaway here is, you want to increase your metabolism through lifting and eating more calories. And then if you do add cardio as a tool to help at the end of a cut, it should specifically be that, a tool that we use at the end of a cut. We don't want to be having you run for an hour every day, counteracting that signal of building muscle, and just plateauing and having your only option to be keep restricting calories or keep running more. So if you are doing a lot of cardio and you're trying to cut, I would start to wean yourself off of that cardio, focus on increasing your metabolism through eating more protein, getting 7-8 hours of sleep a night, and lifting. And then after that, you can restrict calories. But I definitely wouldn't use cardio, because you dig yourself into a hole. So a lot of times it has like a negative effect on people's goals. All right. We will see you on the next episode of Weights and Wealth. In between right now and then, if you wanted to share the podcast with a friend, or subscribe or like or comment or share or whatever on whatever platform, we'd appreciate that. And as always, start reading if you haven't been reading. This is our third book club installment here. We're trying to get people off of TikTok and onto books. So thanks for joining us.